So, hello and welcome to Overdice, episode 3. I'm Lily, and with me I have Tony. Tony, say hi.
Hi.
Tony, you should go turn on a light in the room you're in. It's rather dark. And
No,
then
there it
Kevin,
is.
say hi.
Hello, everyone.
And we have with us our guest, Jose. Jose, hello.
Hi there.
So, Jose, why don't you tell us how you got into gaming and how you became a game master, dungeon master?
All right. Well, how I got into gaming was fairly early on. I think that I got my first start in the NES, back playing those sweet game moves. And how I got into role playing was thanks to Kevin here, who graciously invited me. And as I played with him, I got interested in trying to create my own stories and worlds. So I went on Reddit and tried out a campaign. It was actually not even. I started off as a player rather than a GM in that campaign, and over time the GM started asking me questions, and I was like, "You want me to try running this? I could give it a shot," and then I did, and I didn't brutally murder the players, and everything was fine,
Really?
and I had a lot of fun.
But it's so much fun to murder them.
Yeah, that happened eventually, but it was an accident caused by them.
Okay, that's the best way to do it. That's great. So our episode today is we're going to be discussing our topic is dungeon crafting and world building and our favorite examples, how we go about doing it, and things we try to do and try to avoid doing. So who would like to start?
Ooh, ooh.
Oh, how did I know? It'd be Kevin.
I was gonna say I think Jose would be great to start. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, no. You're up now. So, okay, tell us.
No. I was just thinking how I tend to initially start my, when I create a new world from scratch. I, grab a piece of paper and I just draw a funny shape and just as it, comes to me. And that tends to be exactly how I start it. Make some kind of landmass. And then slowly start to name little pieces here and there and start to slowly develop what goes on in certain areas and, do basic things like culture in the area, main race types, climate. I don't know if I went over that. And I think those are the three main things I try to come up with for each particular area. And just getting those basics down, but I try not to get too much in depth because of the whole over planning thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too far into that, but I definitely start to flesh out an area when I know my players are going to exist in it. Or if I think, hey, the players might be interested in this place, or this might get mentioned or as part of a background, then I definitely want to bring these places in. So that when the players are playing the game, I can go back to this map, and just be like, hey, and then this is area, and actually come talk about plot. They have some background for it. It comes up or doesn't, but I think it's an important part of the game, and gives context.
That explains so much about your land masses in games. I think that actually comes up in the first Dungeon World, Brotherhood episode. We might actually see that landmass, and but yeah, that is a good way to start. It's a very organic way of developing it. I know that we have someone here who's a little bit more logical and structured in his creating of things, and uses spreadsheets and even SketchUp to draw out floor plans of spaceships. Oh, hey, Tony!
Yes. I see what you did there.
You did.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, Tony, hold on a second. You hung. We'll get back to Tony in a minute, as he has not yet realized he's still talking to the room. He doesn't realize that his video is paused. So why don't we go to Jose? Jose, why don't you talk about your building experience while Tony deals with technical difficulties?
Yes,
Absolutely. Well, let's see. It depends a lot on my players. That's an important thing. As a game master, you make your world for your players, and you make it so where they exist, they'll be comfortable and be able to do what they want to do. and then you start throwing in things such as your overall plan, what you want, where you want the campaign to go, what you want your players to face. So my worlds, they are fairly simple when I create them. I often use like a generator, like a Don John. RPG Tools is a site that has a fractal map generators, and I do that a few times. Then I start taking pieces from each one, and like eventually I end up with a giant landmass that exists, and then it has points all around that I can then add story elements to each. Like what kind of story elements are happening here? The world gets divided into countries, and what country is allied with what country, what organization, how easy is it to get from one place to another, and like depending on how the map ends up, you can add a lot of funny things. Like my most recent map ended up being about 80% water, and everything is like piled into one corner. So all the travel is with water, and pirates are a very significant thing that end up happening, and the players were very excited to be pirates, especially the one that got cursed with the magical hat. But hey, so you start with your players for sure for when you're crafting worlds.
All right. And I think we got Tony back. So Tony, sorry for the interruption.
So you don't have a problem because you're not on wireless. Yeah, I broke the wireless earlier today. Whoops.
Oh, thanks for telling me.
Well, it works fine now. So I thought. Yes, I break things regularly. What was? Oh yes, spreadsheet. I think we've mentioned that in both the previous episodes of Overdice of the 165 something character spreadsheet that started out as a fantastic idea and then continued on being wonderful for note taking. With world building, I usually start with characters. Obviously, players fit in however each player wants to fit in. Just like you dump players into a world, some GMs make the world around the players. I make the world, and then the players interact with it, if that makes sense. Universe in some cases, which was a terrible idea.
It was fun.
It was fun. I gave myself too large of a framework to work with and ended up having to fill it because you guys went and talked to everyone, and I couldn't have cardboard cutouts. I think there was only like 100 NPCs that didn't get interaction in the campaign, which was... Yeah, that worked well.
We did our best.
Let's see. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's the issue with having GMs as players.
Yes. Well, you know how the mechanics work, and you know how to break them, and you know how to maximize them, which I respect, because I do the same thing. Sorry, Kevin, but it's kind of a thing.
It's okay. It also means I know how to unbreak them.
Yes.
But anyways. Yeah,
Let's see. The last thing I have on my world building ideas is I frequently use a templates / questionnaire thing that I've dug up online and bookmarked. I don't remember who made it originally, but it's got a huge list of questions that start off, I think, on the right foot, and I kind of go from there. It's conceptual questions, less of gravity and that kind of thing, and like can players interact with each other, and how do characters interact with each other, culture and society, and is there magic? No, yes, technological aspects of the game, and so on and so forth. And I'll dig that up and give you the link so that you can put that in the description of the video and audio.
I'll add that. Is that the list by Patricia C. Reed?
Yes, that's the thing.
She is one of my favorite fantasy authors, and when I was a kid, I actually wrote her a letter, and she responded to it, and that was the coolest thing I had as a kid, because I was obviously a bit of a bookworm, and I liked stories and books, so I read books, and she actually wrote back to me, and I still have that letter at my parents' house. It's so cool. She actually wrote me back. But anyways, the way I build worlds is I actually start with the story of the world. For example, the last major campaign I ran, I built an entire pantheon of deities and their hierarchy and politics and drama. And I built the framework for it, and I gave them some character building, and then I used a world generator for the actual world place, but put very little into it. I put 2 locations. I started with 2 locations. The city they started in, and a cave where the dragon that was attacking the city was. And as the characters went through the world, I not only fleshed out the world itself, adding a dwarven city, an elven city, ethereal realm where they were challenged as mortals and stuff, but also the characters' interactions with the deities further developed the deity characters as well as the politics within the deities. For example, my favorite character from that campaign was Loka, the god of chaos, and he was brilliant to play. But the reason he became so interesting and so relevant is because a character started interacting with him and started indulging him. It was Eric. For those of you who've been listening to our gaming sessions of the Brotherhood, you'll know that Eric is a force of chaos and so fit perfectly with Loka, and it just caused all sorts of shenanigans. But the thing is, world building, I found, if you provide a loose framework for both story and place, but have room to grow, it really, at least that worked for me, really successfully. Because I was able to grow the world with my players, and they thought I had the whole thing planned, which was great, because they thought I was on top of everything, even when I wasn't at all. So, yeah, it's nice.
A great way to build your world is to give your players the illusion of it being already set. As I said before, I section off countries and kingdoms and what they're doing, but everything between the major cities or say the different alliances that they make is all just random. I also encountered different spreadsheets online that I use that just like let you RNG 100% roll, and bam, suddenly there's a Hydra there, which is really unfortunate sometimes. But that happened, and I believe that created one of my favorite characters to date, Benny the Mythic Hydra, with I think he had like 15 heads, and he just slept in his swamp and took care of orange trees.
All right.
He's a very nice Hydra.
So you always have the best characters, and just always the strangest things happen.
Yeah, we have fun.
Yes, I know you do. But yeah, I think a big part of creating the world also has to do with the premise that you may set, which is like the main underlying plot or idea behind everything. And I really like to set a premise for the world. So in one of them, the main premise was this whole crystal war, where everyone would get affected by these crystals that would slowly grant them power as they killed other crystal users or absorbed the life energy of other just
Innocents.
non-crystal users. And then, so I just kind of created a world like that, a world at war, where going around and killing things was a little bit easier to go and do, like easier to explain away. So I tried to create a world around that premise, because it helps gather how the world is going to react to what the characters will do. And there's a lot of opportunity there, really, like changing how the culture is, because most everyone here is from lives in the same culture roundabout. So giving the players an opportunity to play around in a world where the expectations are a little bit askew, you can have a lot of fun with that and create a lot of awkward scenarios.
And then you have a player who's playing a good character in that world who's trying not to kill anyone and just make sure everyone's happy, and then that makes it even more complicated.
It's lovely.
It was fun, but then the other party members were trying to kill me because they wanted to go around and kill people, and so that
Paladins are my
complicated things.
favorite. Inter-party intrigue is always the best way to go, like just 100%. As a GM, it makes it fun to watch.
I've never had really good success with that as a player, though. least in Kevin's
Yeah.
campaigns.
I remember the first time as a player, I played a paladin, and I had to kill the warlock. First session, had to die, had to put him down.
I bet the other
I
player
did
loved that.
nothing during the encounter. Like, I was terrible, but I was very efficient at killing the warlock and the barbarian that sided with him. Like, it was a full schism, and I just killed the other side. It was wonderful.
Nice.
That's why I
Anyways.
prefer Kevin to be his little adorable halfling characters.
Who murders
It's friends with
Kingsley.
everyone.
So, how do you guys deal with keeping consistency within your world? Like, you have your overarching idea, but then you're adding some other complexity to it, and you need to keep track of everything that's going on and keep things to be consistent. So, how do you guys handle that usually?
Spreadsheets.
Anyone else?
Jose, I think you made a pretty good point earlier about making it loose enough and kind of adapting to what the characters do. So, not making it too strict so that as these inconsistencies form, you make them consistencies with the world. And I tend to make like an obvious face when the players do this to me, because I'll just like, they'll break my world somehow, normally like with a crit or something, and I just take a moment, step back, and think, redefine the world, and then put it in there, and make it so that whatever the action does works.
Like turning
And
off
so-
the sun.
Turning, like, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes players break worlds, and it just happens. I have experience with that too. I'm sure. I don't know, Kevin, were you told about this? Maybe. No. Anyway, I'll tell everyone. So, in one of my more recent campaigns, no, it's actually it's like 2 years ago. It was a Kingmaker campaign where the players ran a country. They were kings, queens, marshals, generals, royal assassins, etc. And they decided that they would be an Ifrit nation. So I was like, oh, okay. So I gave them a giant plot of sand, and they created a city that was basically immune to fire in a desert. And it was nice. It was their own little paradise. And eventually the world started coming at them because they needed to. There was a character that got infected by a lycanthrope virus, and eventually he decided to go with the other country and eventually just go to war and go through the world and just devour everything, kind of like a locust. So I really couldn't stop it, and the world died very quickly. I don't know how that campaign ended. I think we just kind of stopped one day, which is the worst when you can't help it.
That's unfortunately how a lot of campaigns go to die. Yeah, like Kevin was saying about having a loose framework to build consistency, I found that having that and then taking lots of notes so that when your character goes, oh yeah, and I'm going to talk to that merchant before in the city that we went to 3 months ago in real world time. I'm going to talk to him. What was his name again? Oh yeah, his name was Joe. Joe, the guy with the stuff. And having those notes will help you stay consistent within your world and not, shatter the illusion that it's all real.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like Roll20 provides a great framework for that. It lets you create character sheets, so you just always throw them into a folder, like characters in this city. It's this guy.
Oh, that's a good way to organize it. Thank you, Jose. I've been thinking of a good way to organize my NPCs.
You already have been. You organize them into
No.
good and evil. That's great beginnings, Kevin.
Yeah, it didn't work because then nothing was in my good NPC folder and everything was in my evil NPC folder.
You know about that. I wonder
I think
why.
I put one character and then it was like a zombie or something. It was technically no. I
What
don't know.
about Sue? Sue's so sweet and good. She must be
Uh,
good.
yeah.
Oh, what Whatever happened to my little bird snake?
Oh, that campaign ended because everyone was going to die.
Oh, right. Okay.
They kind of lost. Yeah. Basically, you know, Eric sided with the main enemy villain and made a contract that wasn't breakable, and so was basically holding, half the party at, sword point, trying to hunt down the other half of the party who was kind of, I don't remember. I think they were like stealthing around and stuff, but I remember exactly what was going to happen to them. But
that was Artis, the monk, and the Necromancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were trying to stealthily acquire more souls, and then we tried to do a gladiator match, and
that's right.
The monk failed, and then Artis was like, "No, I will save you," and then jumped in and totally got like sliced in half or something.
And then the Necromancer, I think, tried to jump in as well and like raise the dead on them or something. It was like
he did
no,
like Rorschach level, like do it, and then just like splat. Anyway,
yeah,
that didn't end so well.
I forgot, like, because I thought, like, wait, you guys are okay? Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me how you got all of yourselves killed. All right, that's how it was probably going to end, where once they found out that the other group had all died, the villain who was keeping them alive to kill the other half of the group was probably just going to end up killing the remaining people, because they didn't have much of the party left, and it wasn't going down very well. So your snake actually is fine, Eric, or Jose.
Yeah.
Your snake probably would have helped kill the remaining party members.
Adorable.
So, yeah, no, your snake did fine. it was a happy ending for him, at least.
Yeah, I just remember critting like 3 times that game, and he was just the best snake.
Oh, yes. There was one session I ran where I remember it was like a random half session or something. Sometimes I run these weird sessions, and in this case I had like one person play as a druid, and the rest of the people were like players who still wanted to play, but it wasn't with their character. I let them play as woodland animals. So a lot of them were like CR-18 or CR0 creatures.
Was the best squirrel ever.
And yeah, people were squirrels. And I had to figure out what they could do as a squirrel, which was a lot more than I expected them to be able to do. That's
do
all
a lot
I
of
can
damage.
say. They did pretty
Make them
decently.
swarms. If you'd made them squirrel swarms, it would have been a very, very quick session.
I
Because
can't.
they would have just steamrolled everything.
I was not gonna give you a squirrel swarm. That's too much. That's asking too much. The flying snake was already so OP.
Hey, it followed the rules. It was like CR half? Something like that.
I think it was like CR quarter.
Maybe.
No, you follow the rules. It was good. I was just surprised how much you're able to do with it.
Flying creatures, they do things.
Oh, but I suppose that, I don't feel like my session ended that way, but I feel like sometimes, GMs may have that issue where the characters grow too powerful too quickly.
For the world.
Mm-hmm.
I like to call it the Skyrim Syndrome.
That's a good thing to call it, yeah.
Because in Skyrim...
Explain.
Alright, so there's a very popular Bethesda video game called Skyrim. Many people have heard of it at least, or heard of the meme. I used to be an adventurer like you, but then I took a blank to the knee. So in Skyrim, what frequently happens is a player will grind certain abilities really, really quickly. Then suddenly the entire world is overpowered except for wisps, who happen to level with you, as Tony actually pointed out to me the other day. And so aside from those wisps, the challenge of the game is just falls apart really quickly, and then so you actually have to up the difficulty of gameplay and like make it hard to play like legendary versus regular mode. And even within legendary, you can still grind your skills to high enough to where you just are broken and it's not a challenge anymore. And that's frequently an issue that players have, where they become so powerful that it's hard for the GM to keep up with them. I in fact actually had planned for that issue in my Syria campaign, where I had all the deities and stuff, and I actually planned for 3 as many as possible the characters, but 3 succeeded in becoming deities themselves, because what I'd already had prepping the entire time they were trying to earn their right to become gods and get all these crazy powers, I was setting up a full-scale war of the gods and armies of gods against armies of gods, and it was just going to be absolute chaos, which of course Loka would have loved. And so I was trying to scale. I had actually time to prep and scale my world in preparation and my enemies to help present a challenge to my players. Unfortunately, then one of the gods decided he wanted to murder all the other characters, and the game ended pretty quickly after that. So,
with players getting too difficult for the world, I don't think I've necessarily had that problem yet. I know that a lot of my players are able to circumvent problems that I throw at them with unique and interesting ways, but that's more like kudos to them. Usually when things happen that they need to fight, it's a decent fight. And I don't know if it's because of this. I play and run Pathfinder most frequently, and it has a large SRD of mechanics and templates and things that augment creatures' strengths. So the world evolves with them usually, and in their own way will seek out the problems. Necromancers can only handle so much before they start setting the big guns out.
So many necromancers.
There was like 3.
My problem is the players are typically the necromancers now.
have we had a necromancer in every single campaign, the last 3 campaigns that you've run, Kevin?
I don't. What was
Greg's
it?
been it
The
twice.
last 2, and then it's Michael this time around.
Yeah. Greg did it twice, and then it was Michael now.
I was gonna try and do it in your GURPS campaign, and then you figured out how to severely cripple my wonderful ability to gain infinite mana, and
Plot reasons!
well, I had figured out, aside here, I had figured out how to basically give myself a pool of mana that infinitely recharged itself almost instantaneously, and I could basically cast any spell with little to no penalties, and then she brought my casting ability down to basically cantrips only.
But thing is, he could recharge his cantrips immediately. He had no problem. Instant. Those little spells he could cast them over and over and over and over and over and over and over. It just, he couldn't cast the spell of regen your health entirely immediately and do that for 3 other people in the same round. Because that was broken. So, conveniently, you gave me the perfect plot reason to do this, because you announced yourself, hey, I'm a target, pick me. And you just gave me the perfect opportunity to help balance the game a little bit.
Yes.
Thanks for that, by the way.
Sometimes the DMs need to balance things out a little bit if a player gets too powerful.
Meteors.
Meteors?
I actually
What?
did. Okay, so back to the campaign with the Ifrit. So one of the players was getting too powerful. So like he was super curious about everything and ended up they were like reaching the deep parts of this tomb where they discovered this Rubik's Cube, this green Rubik's Cube with magical sigils on all over the sides, which was basically what I did was what is that, like I want to say 54 things that I wrote out, just like random effects that happen. 1 through 40, I think, were basically harmless, and the higher end of the spectrum had different random effects that would happen. And he's like, oh, well, I'm going to mess with it. So he's like, roll D54s, 50 something or other. And he did. And he rolled like a 47, something like that, which was one of the options that created a world effect. And then there was a little chart of like what kind of world effects. It's like 1 through 5, and he got a 5. 5 being like a meteor storm in an area that, something like that. And it ended up hitting pretty nearby their kingdom. They had a bad time, and eventually I got tired of him just messing with it and continuously messing up his little country. So eventually I just said, like, you're a cat now. And he turned into a little... He was subjected to the effect of baleful polymorph permanently. And he ruled the world as an immortal cat. And I couldn't just kill him, so I didn't want to just kill him. So I turned him to a cat permanently, and he's still able to speak. And eventually he decided to have people worship him. So we eventually eroded the world, so he became the first god that people worship millions of years later, and there's statues to him and everything. So a good
like,
way to create... Yeah.
What?
This tangents to another point about world creation. If you want to have a good world, you could draw from other campaigns and just like stick them in that world. So like, it's why you can have multiple campaigns in one world and just have that world grow. I think the main world that I run now its name is Crescit, and I've had at least 3 sessions on it. Each time it just grows in flavor and different things. Players get to visit places that were created or that were exploded in the previous campaign, and some of the players that are the same realize that, and they see it, and they just realize the nostalgia behind it. They meet their own characters, their old characters, or they find like legacies of their characters. It's just... things like that add flavor to the world. Maybe it was 1,000 years later, maybe it was 2,000 years later, maybe it was 1,000 years before. So it's just, if you create a world and just put time into it, it's always just going to be a lot more fun for everyone. Yeah.
That is actually exactly what Lilly did for her first full-fledged GURPS campaign. I ran one ages and ages and ages ago. Daniel, who's been in some of the Roleplay Stew episodes, was one of my players, as well as my sister. And I did the token me over-planning things. Didn't quite have spreadsheets yet, but I had created an entire world within a little bubble. And Lily's campaign took that bubble, completely, literally shattered it, and went beyond the scope of anything I had created so far, and did that. I think we actually threw in some of my old NPCs into the world's pantheon, and one of the player characters showed up at one point. So that gave me all these warm fuzzies. Like, I know your entire life story, but you're an NPC, and I can't talk to you at all. So it was very cool.
It was fun.
And
Oh yeah, that's kind of what's happening right now in Brotherhood. Basically, they did the Crystal War thing, and that kind of fell apart for them. And
because we were trying to murder each other for crystals.
Put them back in the same world, but in a different portion of time. Sometime before. I think that's all I know right now.
That's all we know.
But one of the, some of the characters may have helped me with particular parts defining the world, like they put in tiefling houses and gave me a list for those. And so the one who helped me with that, sees, because I bring them up now, and she's like, oh, I know what it is, and I know. She's like freaking out, but her character like knows nothing about it because before she was a tiefling of one of the houses, and now she's a hag. For,
This must be
praise the
Maiden.
Overlord.
Praise the Overlord.
There's zero relation between the two, but the player knows. It's like,
Very important to practice non-meta. Non-meta.
Oh, she's very good at non-metaing, but it's definitely very funny to mess with players who I know won't meta, but give them these beautiful scenarios where I know they know.
Like Lord Rhino came back.
Exactly. Lord Rhino was like the guy who hired them in the beginning of the previous campaign. And now he's suddenly back. Well, he left again, but he was back for a little bit.
Oh, he'll be back again.
Players were like, "Oh, it's him."
We kind of flipped out, as you all have heard. But anyways, the other thing I was hoping we could discuss is dungeon generating, because admittedly, at least one of the games we generally play is Dungeons and Dragons. It's a classic, and in Dungeons and Dragons, there are occasionally dungeons that the players have to run. So how do you guys go about building dungeons, populating them with monsters, describing the environment? Something that I still struggle with. How do you guys go about it?
There was, other than the vinyl mats that we used to use in the in-person sessions down in Slough, we had, when I was still in the Air Force, we had these tiles that you could place on a table, and each one of them was square and had certain doorways on each side of the tile, and you could create patterns within that. You could have loops, you could have different pathways, you could have dungeons that were the same. You just marked down on a piece of paper which tile connected to which tile, and all you had to do was look at your notes and boom, 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 map out your entire game board again. And sometimes it would be, you would have a stack of face-down tiles, which I ran one-off dungeon where we started with the entrance. It was an entrance tile, and then, or you could just start in the middle of a dungeon. Who knows? You could do it any way you want. You have to find the entrance, that kind of thing. You start with your starting tile, and then the characters enter forth into the dungeon, and you deploy the tiles onto the play area as sort of a fog of war kind of thing. So they only discover tiles as they go into the tiles, which a few tabletop games that aren't roleplay have used, and I can't remember which one it was that we played at Kevin's house, where you had to navigate the dungeon and then get out of the dungeon as a audio track is playing.
Escape.
Yes.
God
Jose knows.
Ah.
I actually really want to use that kind of mechanic in a roleplay game again, where you only get so many rounds before the caverns crumble or something like that. It adds an element and a mechanic that's really kind of cool.
That sounds like a great one-shot campaign. Hey, Tony, want to run a game of one-shot? Want to run an episode of Roleplays too?
Sure.
Excellent! I have a recording. This is now binding.
What about Jose?
Assuming I don't have an obligation otherwise on that.
Let's see. I'm well known for my dungeons. Because, in fact, my first experience as a dungeon master was running a dungeon. The game master that I was playing with his campaign, he was really bad at dungeons. He didn't like dungeons. He didn't like the concept of dungeons, and he was like, "Oh, I need to have the players run through a dungeon because they're going through a dungeon." So I was like, "Oh, I'll do it because it doesn't sound hard, and I think that I'd have fun with it." So I did. He told me and explained to me what the world was about and what kinds of things to expect. And I gave players a dungeon. It was a pretty simple crawl. They just needed to find a disembodied head. So they went through and found the disembodied head that was locked up and took him out of the dungeon. The dungeon was fairly simple. It was like a prison type deal, so you'd have a few different kinds of watchtower type rooms and prison cells, as well as like a rec area and food area and stuff like that. So the dungeon is just a little room that the little area that they crawl through, and it has traps, it's locked doors, and players navigate that. And really, when it comes to dungeons, it's like that's what it is for me. It has to fit in the world, and it has to make sense and for with what the player's doing. So I think that my most common thing when building a dungeon and mapping a dungeon comes to where the dungeon is and who is housing and leading the dungeon. And my go-to is actually something very similar to what you were talking about, the timer, where the dungeon will collapse. It's actually having the dungeon have a core, and at that core is like a boss that is connected to said core, and there they have their little treasure room or whatever, their base of operations inside the dungeon. People enter, and as soon as they defeat and find their target, what the reason that they're in the dungeon to begin with, the dungeon starts losing its energy, its power, what's ever holding it together, and slowly starts to shatter and come apart. The players aren't required to leave because they're still part of the material world. They can just dig themselves out after the doorways collapse and the ways to escape are no longer, and that itself becomes its own little mini dungeon, how to escape and navigate a crumbled dungeon. So you can have like 2 dungeons for one, right?
Always reuse your work. It's the best. Kevin, do you have any tips on how you build dungeons and lay out monsters and challenges for the players, puzzles?
Yeah, I don't anymore.
Is it because we keep breaking them?
It's different going from as when I was, Tony alluded to the fact that we had vinyl mats and down and slow. So when everyone was in person, I felt it was very important to create an interesting dungeon map, and that would tend to just try to be about like putting in little details, putting in interesting monsters, or just taking the stock monsters and having them do different things that you aren't necessarily limited to those stat block, and that just made them more interesting, made the combat more exciting. But I don't tend to I still do those things, but I don't necessarily build a map nearly as much anymore, because for 5th edition, to me it doesn't seem to matter as much, and I also don't want it to restrict my players, because there's that fact is if you draw in the map, then people can thought like, okay, that's what's there, that's all that's there, and in one way that's helpful, but you remember coming back to the world, it would make sense that there's a bookcase over there, or there would be a window or some shelves like on the mansion right now. So they would have like couches or linens or beds and stuff, and there'd be all these things. And going through and making a dungeon of this place, like there may be a lot of objects in there that I just don't take the time putting in, and in some ways it'd be restricting to have that dungeon, because then you're like, okay, this is all that's there, when really there's a lot more that should be in this area as defined by the world. So by not having a dungeon, then when people can just think like, oh, well, we're in this type of place, so there should be this or this. And it's normally great for me, because then, maybe I thought of it beforehand, maybe I didn't. Well, the answer is, of course, I thought of it.
Of course, yeah.
I know I make no mistakes.
And never ever make things up on the spot. So
no, never. But normally, like, if it's something that would really help them, I might have them roll for it. And so that determines whether or not it's actually there. And that tends to be a mechanic I use very often to create these now dungeons, but without the... Well, yes, I have my characters roll for things.
Rolling. The best way to pretend that you're ready.
Exactly.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
I mean, if they failed the roll, then obviously they didn't see it. It might be there, might have always been there, but they don't know that. But if they succeeded, then you see it, you found it, well done.
Another way to do that is something I've employed. A living dungeon is something I've done a lot. A dungeon with a heart. I think that 4th edition that we played in, Kevin, when you originally ran it, there were monsters in the book that were creatures that were basically mimics, but like enormous.
Oh, it was like a siege tower or something.
Yeah,
And
it was
would
something
be a
like
regular
that.
tower, but then you could go inside and it would just eat you.
Yeah, exactly. But there would be a heart inside. And like that really intrigued me when I saw it. I was like, oh, I'm going to use this because this is such a cool idea. And suddenly walls were moving and things that you see were gone. And things that you didn't see were suddenly there. Living dungeon kind of thing. Same kind of premise of the crystal being the core, but the heart, the living creature that tries to eat you while you try to escape. It's a good way. And if I wanted to talk about creatures in dungeons, I usually build them equally around the players as much as the environment itself, because it's not as fun for players to feel like they're not able to do things against the creatures that you set upon them, like archers. Archers are very hard for a lot of melee heavy or casters to deal with, because they just shoot everyone and anyone. So you want to have a paladin in your party, or else you're just kind of SOL. And magic users are usually their targets, but they don't want to deal with them sometimes. So they run. And players, it's not worth it if the players aren't having fun, really. So you want to create encounters within the dungeon that would suit your player party.
Because that's what it's really all about in the end. It's about the players and the game masters having fun. So.
Oh, of course. We like murdering them.
And they ever so like being murdered by us.
I don't do that at all anymore.
Oh no, Kevin, you just let other players murder other players. You've gotten it down, man. You got the life made. You got players murdering other players.
Yes, I'll have that, but mostly it's creating a situation that that players can handle, and I know that they would have the answers for. I don't do that at all. I just create problems.
And then players roll critical fails, and it's beautiful. I'm referring to my critical fail that'll be coming out later. The second episode of the Brotherhood, it was great.
Get the first one up.
Yes, the first one it will be up long before this video comes out.
But yeah, I don't know. For me, it's different. I like to
Let the players kill themselves.
For me, getting people to move through a certain area, that's motivation. Giving the characters something that they care about. And then they'll go through these hurdles or come up with solutions that they otherwise may not have considered trying to go about doing. Because it's like, oh, that's a little bit too hard, and then leave. That's, I don't know. That to me, that feels more on them. Well, I mean, it is everyone. It is everyone, right? Everyone should have a good time, and this is true.
And everyone should put the effort in to have a good time. If the players aren't trying, they're not going to have fun. As we discussed last time.
It is true. You want to create an environment that's not too difficult. I will definitely admit that. But
try the Bowser kidnapping Peach theory, or method. Yeah, method. It's a lot of the things that I have my characters initially do before I start making the world around them is like give themselves a little background, give themselves motivations. There's traits and drawbacks in Pathfinder that they use, so I have them pick out 2 traits and 1 drawback in exchange for a 3rd trait, I think. Yeah, so 3 traits and 1 drawback. And the drawback is like the principal thing that I use to use as their motivation? How will I be able to get this character into action, basically? One of the characters in my current campaign that's out on hiatus right now while people sort out what they're doing is Love Struck. So he has a NPC that he cares about very much, and being away from that NPC for more than a day or two gives him penalties to his skill checks and attack rolls and ability to perceive. So it becomes very motivational for him to get back to that NPC. Things like that. Always fun.
Yeah. Is there anything else any of you guys want to talk about?
Oh, yes. Actually, something that's also pretty fun about world building is when there are world events. You were talking about before about a war of the gods, and that is, however the gods might battle, could not compare to the amount of devastation that would do to the mortal realm.
I know.
I
was so excited.
You're so sad you didn't get to go farther with that.
So many
I'm
civilian
sorry.
casualties. The world would have been devastated. It would have been great. Sorry,
And-
please continue.
So awesome. There's just things that just bring countries together. Suddenly alliances are randomly made. So people are fighting amongst each other for the smallest amount of things. A cow. I think there was a cow that was very prized in one of my campaigns before. The Ifrit campaign. There was a very special cow. It wasn't actually special. It was just the only cow. But yeah, suddenly there's a wave of angry werewolves or were-tigers, and people's is the way they're going about things changes, and the world being changed by significant events is really one of the more fun things. So always try and make big events happen in the world every now and again during the in-game 10 clock.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Having the players see what you're doing to the world can either be very rewarding for the character, or at least interesting, or devastating. It really depends. Because either they
Why not all
totally
three?
messed up, like blow up a city accidentally.
It was Eric's fault.
So it's Eric's fault. Oh, what was the other one? Well, there's a few more things happening in the Crystal War campaign. I don't think you got too far. Things were starting to happen.
They were starting
But-
to, but we ended up splitting the party pretty quickly because one character is trying to be good and trying to recruit other characters to be good too, and then three were thoroughly committed to just murdering everyone.
But the point is that
Back to the point.
reminiscing aside.
Yes.
Crap. What was my point? Like
We're
the
already
world
experienced,
was
yeah.
changing,
Yes.
and so I really wanted to go into like how these things were affecting the world, and to see start in the beginning. The culture's this way, then have time pass, and now the culture's starting to change, and to have them see the world develop as they move through it, and how they go about things may have to change depending on what's happening around them. And so that was the big thing I was trying to go for with the Crystal War campaign. It just didn't quite get far enough. They didn't survive, really.
But the thing is, there's chance yet with the Brotherhood campaign because we are doing significant changes to things, and we might
They're
yet see the
completely
results.
oblivious. So far.
So far, but we might yet see the changes. Well, thing is, player knowledge versus character knowledge. My character is so devoted to what she's doing, she might not notice anything that's going around her. Plus, she particularly has this admiration for dirt. But the thing is, there's still a chance for us to actually notice what's going on around us.
Yes, it's one of those things. The Brotherhood's an interesting thing because they're definitely affecting the world
Yes.
in big ways too,
Yeah.
and they're totally oblivious to it.
Well,
So
we haven't
it'll be
hit us
kind
in the
of-
head with it yet.
What was that?
You haven't hit us over the head with it yet, so you know.
Exactly. So eventually, I may hit them over the head with it,
When you get
and
impatient.
at that point, it'll be really cool, to you really use the world to create a big story for the players.
Kevin's the kind of GM that will make Gur into a world boss.
Like last time. That's exactly what you did last time.
Anyways.
But yeah, I think it's a really good point. Letting characters see the repercussions of their own actions is a great way to develop the world further and make it even more interesting. And in the bonus, the players are more engaged now because it's their mess. Whether their mess created something beautiful, terrible, or both. Yeah, and so the only other note we had related to this was an interactive environment versus a museum environment, which I think we can all thoroughly agree that one is better than the other. Unless someone has a different opinion.
Museums, of course.
And we don't play the tone anymore.
Are actually pretty silly sometimes, because if everyone's seen Night at the Museum, things are always different.
It was supposed to be a metaphor.
It was a
Jose.
metaphor. Description. Museum and okay.
Not a literal museum. That sounds interesting, and you should do it.
Yeah, well, that'd be an interesting thing, and that'd be an interactive environment in a museum. So you're combining it. But the concept of a museum environment where the characters go in and they walk between these carefully placed plot points and they don't interrupt, they don't touch. It's just like a ride you go through in Disney World or something where everything's going on around you. You just sit in politely and enjoy the ride, versus you're given free reign to go and change the world, as we all seem to really enjoy having players do. So that's what we're getting at.
Look at this beautiful sculpture. I knock it over!
I change it to look like the Overlord.
I think there are cases which just having players run through an experience are pretty good. There are modules and paths that are fairly entertaining to play through. One of them being House of Horrors, or actually I had a lot of fun with Skulls and Shackles back in the day. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, and I've always been trying to. We did Emerald Spire. I think I was telling Kevin about this before while I was playing in it. How the Emerald Spire was a giant collaboration between a bunch of different Paizo map or path makers, and the entire dungeon was insane. It was just a lot of fun playing through. There's one other by Frog Gaming or something like that I've been wanting to play. It was similar to House of Horrors, but it was for Pathfinder. I'll have to look up what exactly it's called.
Well, hey, Jose, if you happen to find one of those, module games, and you wish to run it on Roleplay Stew,
Hey.
you're more than welcome.
We have guest slots open available for those GMs who like to run a one-off in Roleplay Stew. Feel free to apply for those of us we know and trust to not run a crap campaign. So Jose,
I appreciate your application, Jose. I'll let you know when you're next.
my time slot? All right.
Oh, no, you need the application process through. Kevin is reviewing it.
Try and find that dungeon. I hear that it's harder than the hardest dungeon in one of those campaigns. I know that one of the modules has you fight Lucifer. I think this one has you fight Mega Lucifer.
Yeah. Yes. Start spinning.
All right.
So mad. So mad.
We've covered this last time. Tony's still bitter. It amuses me. But yeah, so anyways, thank you so much, Jose, for joining us, and thank you guys for being here as always. For those viewers who are interested, have any ideas or discussion topics you'd like us to talk about, feel free to comment in the YouTube video or on Roleplay Stew, and just let us know if you have something you'd like us to talk about, and we'll consider it. And if it's not a terrible idea, we'll discuss it. And if it's a terrible idea, we might discuss it anyways. So feel free to send any thought, suggestion you have. We're always open to new ideas. And yeah, so thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time on Overdice. See ya. And now, time for the blooper reel.
Well, first I'll explain this. What my profile picture is. It's actually someone drew this representation of me being all sparkly, and
Nice.
I think I said at some point that it looked like a non-scraggy, hairy version of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
At least you're not a Twilight vampire.
Yeah, that's a benefit.
They're fairies. They're not vampires. Fairies drink blood and sparkle.
Yeah, yes they do.
Jose, more face.
Working on it. I think I could use my phone, but then my audio quality would drop. Right now, I'm using a magnificent, giant microphone, so I sound perfect. But my phone, I don't have a camera yet. Working on it. Work in progress.
Kevin, why did you verify that he had a webcam before doing this? Kevin?
What?
It is Kevin's fault.
It is entirely Kevin's fault. She should have told him
always
he needed a
Kevin's fault.
webcam. Come on, man.
All right. I can use my phone.
Kevin,
That is a thing that I can do.
Audio's fine.
audio will be fine. We're just going to bash on Kevin in the beginning of the episode. Probably about like 4 times, I think. Will be like within the recording. I'll edit out any past 4.
Jose, they're gonna bash on me because of this.
Merp.
Damn it, Jose, more face.
See, this is exactly.
This is
I
good.
thought I saw your face before.
Yeah, I probably used my
I
phone.
know it exists.
All right, okay. Hold on a second.
He's actually an artificial intelligence.
Ugh.
No one else knows.
How do I join this way?
Whatever, just whatever. Let me just actually get ready for realsies.
Really? Oh, there's 2 of you now. Oh, hey, I see a face.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna mute this one.
Oh,
Okay,
my.
hold on. Yeah.
There you go. That's better.
Your face. I
Okay.
just see 2 faces.
So,
Okay, so now you only hear me once
and see you once.
and see me once.
Perfect.
Yes? All right, very good.
And the
Right.
explanation of the image and Kevin's fault of being will be in the blooper reel, likely.
All right, very good. I don't know where I should stand
don't-
this. There you go.
Yeah,
No, Lily. You don't have time to make a blooper relay in addition to everything else.
Yay. No, it's like
You
the
need
blooper
to
reel is
finish
really
the
easy.
regular videos first.
No, don't worry, Kevin. The blooper reel is part of the regular video. It's in my editing process. I actually write
It's
down
not gonna edit it
where
out,
the blooper,
okay.
what should be going to the blooper reel. It's in my clips section. I have clips, cuts, and quacks. So, Jose, I edit out all uses of the word and then various other less savory words. They get edited out, so I quack them out. Except for Kevin,
Okay.
when Kevin is is a GM or DM, he gets merped. When he's a player, he doesn't get special treatment. He gets special
I
treatment.
sent
He gets
her
it back.
multiple sound clips of Merp.
It was great. I used one, but that one was a good one.
I would like Murloc sounds for any of my accidents.
If you send me recordings of it in time before I edit this video, I'll include that. Otherwise,
Okay.
it's gonna be quack.
that
And the
sounds
thing is,
fine.
the quack is a real duck noise. Just so you know, it's a beautiful thing.
Okay. God, good. So I'll encourage myself to. No, I will not.
No,
Edit that thought.
But you
it
need
makes
to go
easier
and
for
get
me.
a real Murloc sound. You can't, make one up. You have to get a real
Yeah.
Murloc.
I need to become. I believe.
Good luck.
All right. So, Kevin told you what we're discussing in this session of Overdice.
Yes.
Episode. I'm calling them episodes. I will remember to call
Do
it
you
episodes.
remember what it was?
This is
Jose?
episode 3 of Overdice, and I will
Was-
do a real intro in a minute.
Yes.
Almost
I
always.
know. I actually have experience with the Brotherhood, something like the Brotherhood. Basically, it's called Evil League of Evil that I played. Bad
Sorry.
Horse is my favorite.
You
Yes!
just made Lily's day.
Oh, good.
I made a Dr. Horrible reference like less than... I made it 3 hours ago. No, 2.5 hours ago. I said, and
Oh
these are
my-
not the hammer.
Lily, calm down.
No, I refuse. Oh yes, there's a game
You
of Evil
dork.
League of Evil. Are you serious?
Yeah, absolutely. I've played in it, and I've run a war. I ended up being a evil dragon, and it was pretty good times.
Can we do that?
My microphone is one of those blue snowballs. It's just
Which are
it's,
freaking
is
fantastic.
it is a recording phone, recording microphone.
Nice.
So it's like
I have a gaming headset. Yay.
you can hear my voice all very close and personal if you want.
Oh wow.
But
Oh, is this what we're doing now?
that's exactly what we're
Whose
doing.
voice is more smoky?
I think that it's definitely mine. If I put on the
I would disagree.
oh, do you?
And Tony, you eat that mic. You eat it good.
Pure quality stuff, guys. This is great.
Eat the mic.
Did I mention I'm still recording? Oh yeah.
You still are allowed
Mika,
to
where the
post
spiders
that.
live.
The shenanigans.